Good afternoon, everybody. This is Scott Dudley with the Florida League of Cities. Thank you for joining us today on the webinar relating to legislative issues for the 2012 session. We appreciate you taking time to be here. The way we're going to handle it today is we're going to have each of the lobbyists talk about the specific issue areas that they're dealing with, and we're going to handle questions at the end. And if you have questions as we're going along, go ahead and send them to us as we're proceeding through the process. The session will last about 45 minutes, with the remaining time left for questions at the end. Use the Q&A section to submit your questions during that time, or you can submit them to the webinar speaker via their contact information at a later time. You can send it to Jan. Any questions you might have to Jan at jpilland@flcities.com. Today's presentation will be posted in the FLC website at www.floridaleagueofcities.com under the Events and Training tab as quickly as we can get it posted. And I'd like to now, this button here, Jan? The down? Sorry about that. Right. Oh, to the right. Great. Or not. There you go. We're going to start off with just a broad overview of the League's #1 priority for this session, which deals with pension, police and firefighter pension reform, and Craig Kahn is going to lead you through that issue. Craig?
Thank you. The pension reform issue for this year picks up where it left off last year. Last year, the legislature passed Senate Bill 1128, which we view as beginning the process for taking the legislature out of the relationship between cities and primarily their police and fire employees relative to their pension benefits and how those pension benefits are funded. The pension reform is going to cover 3 or 4 broad areas. The first one deals with the use of the insurance premium tax revenues. Back in 1999, use of those revenues was substantially changed by the legislature, and it required cities to begin to provide new extra pension benefits. That has resulted in a fiscal mandate to cities in the aggregate of over $460 million in new pension benefits to police and firefighters since 1999. That's probably one of the biggest issues. And there are 2 bills. I'm going to jump a little ahead. These issues are all addressed in Senate Bill 910 and House Bill 365, which we will get to in just a minute in the slides. The next issue that the bills address relates to providing more flexibility to cities and their employees and just what type of pension is provided, be it a Chapter 175 fire or 185 police plan, or a membership in the Florida retirement system, or something different. The third issue relates to the operation of boards of trustees that operate these police and fire pension plans and providing some level of fiscal transparency and accountability. And then finally, the fourth issue relates to disability presumptions, and a disability presumption that I'm speaking of is a heart and hypertension presumption, and that is any health condition suffered by a police officer or firefighter relative to heart disease or hypertension is presumed to be job-related. There's been these disability presumptions have been on the books for a number of years. They're quite costly in the workers' compensation and the disability pension areas. And it's not to say that police officers and firefighters may not be entitled to these benefits. However, under the disability presumption laws, in all cases, they are basically getting them regardless of, for instance, certain lifestyle choices that a police officer or firefighter may choose to engage in, for instance, smoking cigarettes or other lifestyle choices. Let's see where we are. We're already up to the status of the bills. The House Bill 365 by Representative Costello is in the House. Governmental Operations Subcommittee. That is a committee chaired by Representative Jimmy Petronis out of Panama City. If you have any communication with Representative Petronis, please ask him to hear House Bill 365. And that bill actually has two sponsors, two primary sponsors, Representative Fred Costello out of Ormond Beach and Representative John Julian, Democratic legislator out of the city of Miami. Senate Bill 910 by Senator Alan Hayes is in the Senate Banking and Insurance Committee. That committee is chaired by Representative Garrett Richter out of the city of Naples. Again, if you have any communication with Senator Richter, please ask him to hear Senate Bill 910. As an add-on, last year in Senate Bill 1128, the legislature created a task force to review disability presumptions. That task force has finalized its report. It has a number of very good recommendations to make disability presumptions, the application of those presumptions, more fair. And it does not call for any repeals, but it does call for some reasonable changes to those laws. And the League of Cities will be supporting the recommendations from the task force. And you will see amendments to Senate Bill 910 and House Bill 365 to reflect those majority vote recommendations out of that task force. And next we'll hand it on over to David Cruz to talk about some economic development issues.
Hi, good afternoon. The Florida legislature and local governments have focused on the area of economic development as a way to restart Florida's economic engine and create more jobs for Floridians. The League of Cities will support legislation that promotes state agency coordination with local entities through providing increased technical assistance, building public infrastructure, and infill projects and programs, as well as offering appropriate business incentives that support local economic development. There are several bills that have been filed that the League will be monitoring or supporting that provide for public building infrastructure and infill projects and programs that offer business incentives that support local economic development. One of these bills is Senate Bill 576 by Senator Bennett and House Bill 337 by Trudy Williams, Representative Trudy Williams. These bills provide that certain qualifying infrastructure projects may be fulfilled by public-private partnerships. An example of this might be a city that needs to have some stormwater work done, and they might not have the funds available to fund the project. They might be able to get a private company to build the project, and the private company may then be able to charge user fees to city residents in order to fund the project. House Bill 337 is in the Government Operations Subcommittee, and Senate Bill 576 is in the Governmental Oversight and Accountability Committee. Another bill that the League is watching is Senate Bill 612 by Senator Ring and House Bill 207 by Representative Berman that create the Floridians Back to Work program. The program authorizes the paying of wage subsidies up to $2,000 for the hiring of each qualified job applicant by a participating employer. This would be an example of a bill that might support local economic development by giving business incentives to local businesses. Senate Bill 612 is in the Commerce and Tourism Committee, and House Bill 207 is in the Business and Consumer Affairs Subcommittee. I'm going to pass over the mic to Amber Hughes to discuss local business exemptions.
Good afternoon, Amber Hughes. The next legislative priority of the League of Cities that we're going to talk about is the one protecting the communication services tax and the local business tax. These two taxes were actually put together in this legislative priority because they both play vital roles in the funding of our cities. They're both essential sources of general revenue. They can be used for any sort of expense. And most importantly, most of these, some cities have actually utilized these revenue sources to secure debt. The status update, I'm going to do it separately. The communication services tax, there are actually two different proposals that are moving about in Tallahassee right now. The one that is the CST, is the local business tax. Okay, I'll go to that. one set of bills that I'm going to talk about is local business tax, and this is a bill that the League of Cities adamantly opposes, and that's House Bill 4025, Senate Bill 760, and I'm going to throw in House Bill 1063 into the mix. These all repeal the authority of cities and counties to levy the local business tax. Cities currently levy about $154 million worth of local business tax. They use these funds to pay for police and fire and public works and economic development, and this set of bills would completely zero out that revenue stream. House Bill 1063 recently has come onto the scene, and the only difference in that bill is it does allow cities to use this revenue stream to secure debt to continue to collect only until the debt is repaid. So while that is movement in the right direction, it's not far enough for us. So those are bills that we definitely oppose. The other bills relating to local business tax is dealing with an additional exemption. For the past couple of years, the real estate industry has tried to get an exemption from local business tax. This bill moves forward with that type of exemption. We oppose this type of legislation because it continues to erode the tax base for this revenue source. The other piece of this is the communication services tax. There are two proposals dealing with this. One that we do oppose. It is actually a budget reduction exercise that the Department of Revenue has proposed to the Appropriations Committees. It would completely repeal the authority of cities to levy the communication services tax, and instead would allow the county to levy it and would be distributed by a formula. Obviously, this goes against the concept of having a home rule, and we adamantly oppose this proposal. If you either know Representative Hooper or Senator Hayes, these are the chairs of the two appropriation committees in the House and the Senate. Please let them know that this is a vital source of revenue for cities, and we want to remain in control of that revenue source. And with that, this other piece on the CST, which is a bill that we're just currently monitoring and trying to analyze, deals with definitions and the database. Well, more on that, so stay tuned on our Monday morning calls to get an update on that bill. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian Matthews.
Good afternoon. The League has a broad water policy for the 2012 legislative session. Involved in that policy is the League will support action by the legislature, which will help retain the tools that are essential in local government's compliance with federal water quality standards. Local governments are required under the Federal Clean Water Act to clean up impaired water bodies in their surrounding areas. Some of the tools that can help local governments do so is local control over fertilizer ordinances, as well as septic and stormwater regulations. The League also supports legislation that removes reclaimed water from the statutory definition of waters of the state. Currently, the League is involved with litigation to strike the federal water quality standards that's derived by the Environmental Protection Agency. These federal rules were not scientifically realistic, and the League asserted that these numbers would cause a significant cost to local government. EPA has since stated that it will allow DEP to set its own standards if found feasible, and it is our hope that the EPA will develop those standards, will drop its federally mandated standards once DEP has officially approved their rule. Water essentially is going to be a hot topic this session. In order for DEP's rules to go effect for the numeric nutrient criteria standards, they must be ratified by the legislature. It is our hope this will happen early on during the session. It's our argument that in order to have a comprehensive numeric nutrient quality standard for the state, there are many different water bodies throughout the state, ranging from northern Florida to southern Florida. When you talk of canals, lakes, estuaries, the Everglades, certainly a rule that has a one-size-fits-all mentality isn't going to work for the state. Cities need to have all the tools available to them to prevent the pollution and avoid cleanup costs, which will fall solely on local government. Continuing on with water policy, one of the League's priorities is House Bill 639 by Representative Young. House Bill 639 states that reclaimed water is not considered a water of the state in terms of statutory definition. Essentially, reclaimed water is an important alternative water supply source which meets non-potable needs, irrigation on golf courses, and many other uses. The genesis of this bill is essentially many of our local governments have spent significant portions of money to develop stormwater and reclaimed water systems and utilities We feel that those are wise investments that should be able to reap the cost of producing those utilities. Some of the status of the bills in this subject area: House Bill 639, as I said, is currently on its second committee reference stop. We have a fertilizer bill, House Bill 421 by Representative Smith and Senate Bill 604 by Senator Dean, which exempts commercial fertilizer applicators from local fertilizer ordinances. Essentially, if you take a 4-hour class and are registered with the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, you would be exempt from any and all local government ordinances dealing with fertilizer. The League is adamantly opposed to these bills. The next stop for House Bill 421 is Community and Military Affairs Subcommittee, which is chaired by Representative Workman from Central Florida. And the next stop in the Senate is the Environmental Preservation and Conservation Committee, which is chaired by Senator Dean, who is the sponsor of this bill. If you know either of these legislators, we would ask that you please contact them and let them know that local governments really need the flexibility to enact these local fertilizer ordinances to protect themselves, because ultimately we will have to foot the bill when it comes to cleaning up our impaired bodies of water. Moving on to the septic tank issue, House Bill 79 by Representative Coley and Senate Bill 114 by Senator Evans, as well as Senate Bill 178 by Senator Lynn, repeal the mandatory septic tank inspection program, which will be run through the Department of Health, essentially stating that once every 5 years, if you are on a septic tank system, you have to have that system checked and pumped out to ensure that it is not leaking effluents into the water bodies. We are supportive of these bills. Unfortunately, as of right now, House Bill 79 and Senate Bill 114 have not been heard in any committee. So if you do live in Representative Coley or Senator Everett's district, please voice your support for those.
Not the alternative, the other versions of the bills that we don't like, the point of sale.
I will also talk about some of the other septic tank bills. There are currently 6 septic tank bills filed so far during the 2012 legislative session. House Bill 999 by Representative Dorworth and also Senate Bill, I believe, 804 by Senator Dean also do repeal the mandatory inspection program by the Department of Health. What they do insist, though, if your area is located within a first magnitude spring, you have to set up and develop a septic tank inspection program. The bill also calls for a very narrowly defined ordinance that you have to enact if you do rely or live in one of those areas. One of the biggest problems the League has with this is, number one, it's a preemption and essentially forcing you to enact an inspection program. But it also states that no ordinance may able to address a point of sale during a residential sale for a home. It's the League's thought that obviously if you're buying a new home, you should absolutely have your septic tank checked if you have one. It goes just along with buying a house and checking the roof. It's simply something that just makes common sense. So the League is opposed to those 2 bills. And again, if you live in Senator Dean's district or Representative Dorworth, those are bills that we would certainly like you to address to them. I will continue with campus development agreements. One of the legislative priorities for the League in 2012 are campus development agreements. Essentially, there are no bills as of right now. To give you a quick status update, the League has met with the Board of Governors. They would be the entity that would be pushing a bill that would fall under this. Essentially, a campus development agreement is a formed agreement between a local government and a member of the state university system. What they do is they address the impact on local infrastructure that the university no doubt will have. Most of them are large, expansive land uses. And so these are predetermined agreements that usually last anywhere from 5 to 7 years, determining what impact fees the universities will pay to local governments. Historically, these fees originated from the State University Concurrency Trust Fund. That trust fund has since been wiped clean. So the Board of Governors' thinking is that they should not have to pay these impact fees since their cost is no longer being added from this trust fund. Some of the examples of the agreements that are currently in place allow for impacts such as stormwater management, sanitary sewer, solid waste collection, disposal, parks and rec, fire and rescue, transportation concurrency. Obviously, this would have a huge fiscal impact if local governments were to be on the hook to pay for every added density intensity that a state university system would have on their area. So the League is adamantly opposed to any and all action that would erase this agreement that has worked so well between local governments and state university systems. And we also would like to see additional monies be set aside for the concurrency trust fund. And with that, I will send it back to David Cruz.
One of the legislative priorities for the League this session is the pending ordinance doctrine. The doctrine holds that local governments can delay a permit application while a zoning ordinance that would render the proposed development non-conforming is pending. The philosophical idea behind the theory is meant to protect local governments from a rush of permit applications while the governing body is in the process of adopting an ordinance. The rush to the courthouse, so to speak. Currently, no legislation has been filed that affects the current application of the pending ordinance doctrine. Last session, however, a late-filed amendment was introduced that would have prevented local governments from continuing to use this doctrine. The measure was ultimately defeated. So this session, the League is going to continue to monitor for any amendments that may be filed that would change the current process of the pending ordinance doctrine. With that, I'm going to pass the mic to Casey Cook.
Good afternoon. I will talk about two of the League's priorities. The first is effective public notice. There are numerous statutory provisions which require cities to provide public notice for advertising in local newspapers. Cities spend on an average over $20,000 a year on these legal advertisements. And it's proven that newspaper readership is going down, and the cities aren't always, or the citizens aren't getting their news from newspapers anymore. There have been two bills that allow us a little bit more flexibility in choosing where we put those advertisements. For example, we could place them on our website or at libraries, or if the city wanted to, they could send it out in a direct mailing. The first bill is Senate Bill 292 by Senator Bennett, who is the chair of the Community Affairs Committee. And his bill authorizes cities to use their website for legally required advertisements and public notices. The other bill that's in the House, backing up, Senate Bill 292 is on the committee agenda in the Community Affairs Committee that meets next Thursday afternoon. We are supportive of the bill. I would urge each of you to contact members of the Community Affairs Committee and let them know that the League supports that bill and that your city supports the bill, and it's going to allow you a lot more flexibility in choosing how taxpayer dollars are spent. The House version is House Bill 937 by Representative Workman, and it's a little different than the Senate version, but essentially it requires newspapers to place all legal notices published in the newspaper onto a website created by the Florida Press Association. In addition, the bill specifies that newspapers can't charge more than 85% of the original rate for government notices that are required to be published more than once. We would see a little bit of a savings on that, but we do support Senate Bill 292. The next League priority is the E911 Public Safety Telecommunicator Certification Exemption. Quite the mouthful. In 2010, there was a law that was passed that required all dispatchers, or will require all dispatchers, to go through an extensive training course and pass the test. In several of our smaller cities with small law enforcement agencies, they use law enforcement officers as temporary dispatchers. Any law enforcement officer in current law right now hired after April 1, 2012 will have to go through this 232-hour course and then take the certification exam. It's going to be very expensive for our cities to send an officer down to a training course to go through a 6-week training course and then have to pass the test, when a lot of that information is redundant. They get it in the police academy. So there have been two bills filed that will allow sworn law enforcement officers who graduated from the academy to take the certification exam. The bill number, and actually I have some good news for you today, House Bill 1227 by Representative Drake was actually filed today. It's awaiting its committee references, but that's good news. And the Senate bill is Senate Bill 514 by Senator Dean. It passed the Senate last year, so it only has one committee reference this year, and that's the Senate Community Affairs Committee. And the good news is that that bill is on the committee agenda for next week and should pass out of the committee. The bill passed the Senate unanimously last year, so we're very happy to see that. Please contact any members of the Community Affairs Committee again. Let them know that we're supportive of that bill, and we thank Senator Dean and Representative Drake for filing those bills. I'm now going to pass it to Stephen Hogg, who is going to talk about residential group homes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. One type of residential group home is known as a sober transitional living home. These are community residential homes that provide peer-supported and managed alcohol-free and drug-free living environments designed to help foster the treatment of addictions. Many of you in local government know that the operator of these homes, many of them are not regulated, and they are often quite controversial with neighboring residents and generate NIMBY concerns. Cities are supporting legislation that will require community residential homes where substance abuse and treatment is provided by a licensed service provider to notify local governments upon application and to adhere to local standards for occupancy. There is one bill filed so far, that's by Senator Bogdanoff. We expect a House bill to be filed soon. The Senate Bill 1026 addresses several of the concerns that are of interest to cities. It includes the provision that substance abuse treatment be provided by a licensed service provider, that these homes adhere to local standards of occupancy. It does not include the requirement, however, that they notify the local government upon application, and so that's something that we'll want to work with the sponsor on. The bill has been referred to the Senate Children, Families, and Elder Affairs Committee, Community Affairs, and Budget, so it has a number of stops. And again, there's no House companion yet, but we expect to see one. And I'm going to turn it back over now to Ryan.
Thank you. In the area of energy, during the 2012 session, the League will support legislation that establishes a statewide policy on energy development and conservation. Conservation being the key word in that sentence. We're seeing that more and more energy is lost between the production from the producer until it gets to the ultimate user end at the consumer level. We hope this will provide incentives on the development and implementation of renewable and alternative energies. Much like water, it's our belief that energy is getting more and more expensive. We should be focused on alternative supplies both in the water and energy arenas. We're hopeful that during this session the League and the legislative session will focus some attention on energy. As of right now, there are numerous bills relating to alternative energies out there. As I said before, we're seeing the cost of electricity and other fuel sources just rise significantly each year. One thing I did want to mention in the arena of energy is qualified energy conservation bonds. These bonds are federally supported tax credits issued by the local or state governments for projects related to energy conservation. Essentially, these are bonds that encourage the production and resources into shifting into an alternative energy supply. They provide an opportunity for not only economic development, but moving forward towards energy efficiency and more interdependence on a local level. Unfortunately, we have not seen any action taken during this session so far that involve QECBs. In order for this to come to fruition, action needs to be taken either by the governor or the legislature, so I would encourage each of you to contact your legislators to let them know that you support QECBs. It's an easy $190 million that local governments would have access to in order to encourage the uses and more energies of alternative energy, and it's something that we would highly suggest that you do. With that, I will turn it back to Scott Dudley.
Great, and I wanted to thank you all for taking time to walk through those issues for our members. Wanted to remind you that the League, on the League website, is a pension reform kit, essentially, that's available to you. It has a number of resolutions, a short version, a long version, a version that's if you're a Chapter 175 city or a Chapter 185 city. So there's a whole bunch of different options available to you. And what we're asking cities to do is to adopt resolutions and to send those resolutions to your legislative delegation and let it be known that that you are in support of pension reform. It is definitely, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in just a second, but it's definitely one of those issues that when we tell the legislators that this is a very important issue for the League of Cities, one of the worst things that we can hear is that, well, I haven't heard from my city on this particular issue. So we don't want to let any legislators off the hook by saying that they haven't heard from their city. And in order to do that, that means you have to weigh in and help us out, help us push that rock up the hill. And it won't work without your assistance. Craig, you have anything you want to add on that?
Just one note, additional note, and that is there appears to be at least a degree of miscommunication being made by various entities. And if you have any questions relative to the pension/disability presumption bills, please communicate with the League of Cities, because I do know that there are organizations, and one of them being the Florida Public Pension Trustees Association, quite frankly, also some local and statewide unions are providing a high level of misinformation relative to Senate Bill 910 and House Bill 365. As Scott mentioned, there are 3 sample resolutions that the League has provided as a starting point for each city to consider adopting a resolution to support both or either singly the reforms to Chapters 175 and 185 for police and fire pensions, and primarily the major thrust of those proposed changes is to have the pension benefit levels and the use of insurance premium taxes subject to collective bargaining. And if you hear anything otherwise relative to how those bills are being presented, then please communicate with us, because that is the major thrust relative to pensions. Secondarily is the disability presumptions. If your city is not in 175 or 185 for their police or fire pension, there's a third resolution which is relative strictly to disability presumptions. And as I stated earlier, I think disability presumptions cut across all sectors of cities because it affects your workers' compensation costs as well as disability pension costs, regardless of what pension system you're in, if you're in the Florida retirement system or some other system. With that, we would encourage your adoption of these resolutions. It's still not too late, even though session starts on Tuesday. Those resolutions continue to come in, and we hope that all cities will see fit to adopt some form of resolution between now and hopefully between mid to late January, when these bills will truly be in play at that point. So with that, I'll turn it back to Scott.
Great. And we're going to talk a little bit now about advocacy, and I guess really we're going to give you the short version of advocacy, which is in real estate, it's about location, location, location. And in politics, it's about relationships, relationships, relationships. And I can't stress that enough. You need to be, it's sessions next week, so it's going to be a little difficult to get a meeting between now and then with your legislator, but it's not too late that when they're home or when you see them over the weekends or whatever, to reach out to them, let them know what you're that you're supportive of the League's agenda, that you're supportive of their efforts to try to work with local governments in general. You have to just be building those relationships, and that's an ongoing process that really starts during session and throughout the year, of making sure that the legislators know that you're available to help them on their issues, that you're not just going to them when you need something, but that you're also available to assist them. They do need your help on a variety of issues, and you can help facilitate that. The other thing is that you need to include them in as much as possible. We had some discussion about economic development before, and one of the key factors on that, one of the city's key drivers on that is CRAs, invite them to tour your CRA, invite them to tour a wastewater treatment plant so that they can understand some of the dynamics of what Ryan was talking about with the clean water issues. There's a whole host of issues and ways that you can reach out to your legislators, and it's vital that you do that. The other thing related to relationships is the league has a key contact network, and the key contact network is basically where if you have a good relationship with a legislator, that you let the league know that, and that we can utilize your services to make contact with the legislator when we have an important issue that's up for a vote, that you can be that contact that we go to try to get their support on a particular issue. The other issue that I encourage you to do, and your participation on today's phone call really addresses a lot of this, is understanding the issues. The league is here. All the lobbyists that are sitting around in the room, all the staff that's available, we are here to help you understand the issues. And you should don't ever be afraid to ask any questions, because the only stupid question really is the one that's not asked. And so feel free at any point. We have all of our email addresses. You have phone numbers for us. Those are listed on the website. And you feel free to call us at any time. Plan to attend the Legislative Action Day on January 24th and 25th here in Tallahassee, and also the annual conference in August, and then the legislative conference in November, which that date's to be determined. But being involved in the policy committee process, as well as just being involved in the league's activities in general, is really an important way for you to fully understand the issues and sort of get a sense of the direction the league is going. I wanted to, Allison's going to talk to you a little bit about the league's new program for reaching out to legislators on issues called Capital Connect. And Allison, you want to talk some about it?
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon. One of the tools that our technology department put together to help you stay in touch with your legislators during session is a tool called Capital Connection. It can be accessed through the League's Legislative and Advocacy webpage. There's a button in one of the blue boxes called Capital Connection. And what this tool allows you to do is you can pull up your legislators by your city name. You can pull up a House or Senate committee if you want to send an email to an entire committee. You can pull it up by legislative district, or by the name of the legislator. We're trying to make it as easy for you as a city official. We know your time is limited. When we send those alerts out, to allow you to go to this website or link on our website and just punch in who you need an email to go to and send a personalized email message to particular legislators on the issues that we're asking you to call to action. One thing to note, as you send these emails to your legislators, the way this is set up is it sends us at the Florida League of Cities a blind copy of your email so that we know which of our city officials are communicating with legislators, so we know who to follow up with and make sure that all our legislators are being targeted. So just be aware of that when you send emails. But this is, again, another tool to help you stay in touch better with your legislators during session. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. I guess now we're pretty much finished with the presentation that we had. Thank you all for taking time to participate. And if you have any questions about the bills, hopefully you're reading the legislative bulletin that we put together each week during session, and that you're all receiving the little weekly synopsis that I put together at the end of each week. On a Friday, you should receive it, basically telling what happened in a real short form for that week's legislative session. Hopefully you're going to our website on a regular basis, because we update it consistently and regularly with good, solid information. And so we are here to help you. If there's a way that we can better communicate with you, if there's something that we're not doing that you think that we need to be doing in order to communicate better with you, please let us know that too. We're doing things the way we think are working, but you all are at the receiving end of what we're doing, and if you think that there's a better way or a more concise way that we can get the information to you, please let us know that. We're open to changes on that and to suggestions. Again, finally, I encourage you to attend the Legislative Action Days on January 24th and 25th in Tallahassee. Again, go to the website, register to attend. And with that, we're happy to try to answer any questions that might have come in. Thank you all.
Scott, one of the questions is, will this PowerPoint be provided to the attendees on the webinar? And yes, it will be sent out to attendees that registered for the webinar and also available on our website under events and training. So this PowerPoint, which I know is lengthy, will be available, sent out to attendees and also available on the website.
One second, we're reading the questions here.
Auto insurance rates continue to increase in Florida. Is any legislation being introduced to make it illegal to use a cell phone while driving?
Casey?
There are a couple texting while driving bills out there. Senator Dieter is the person driving the car, I guess you could say. On the Senate side, her bill has passed the Senate Transportation Committee. There are a couple bills filed in the House as well. I believe Representative Schlossberg from Boca Raton and Representative Julian from South Florida as well have filed some texting while driving bills. I'm not sure that there is an appetite for passing those bills in the House, but one can only speculate. If I had to guess, I would say that they probably aren't going anywhere this year.
Any other questions?
Can you identify league staff with subject areas so we know who to contact?
The question was, can we identify league staff with subject areas? Yes, we can. That will also be on the website, but I can try to, if generally speaking, Ryan Matthews is handling the energy and environmental quality issues, anything related to those. And you got to recognize, a caveat at the front end is that not all issues fall into a clean category, so sometimes we just sort of stick something where it's just, we think it's appropriate based on a number of issues, workload, et cetera, et cetera. So not everything's as clean as it may seem, but by issue area, we break them down according to the policy committees. And then you can also check which bill who's following by reading the legislative bulletin, because after each summary is the name of the lobbyist who's handling that bill. So if you go to the league website and read the legislative bulletin for that week, and you have a question about a bill, just see whoever's name is at the end of it, and that will tell you which lobbyist you need to contact. With respect to continuing on the list, as I said, Ryan handles energy and environmental quality. Casey handles the broad spectrum of issues that's under urban administration. That's the whole public safety, code enforcement, red light cameras, those type of issues. David Cruz is handling intergovernmental relations, and that's basically economic development issues, charter schools, annexation, just a variety of intergovernmental growth management also is under that rubric. Sorry about that. Those are his issues. We have Stephen Hogg is going to be handling a broad host of issues. I don't even know that we have a category. He's our catch-all guy. Right-of-way, billboards, transportation, highway safety, eminent domain, those type of issues. Again, this is all on the web for the specifics, but I'm just trying to give you an overall picture. Craig Kahn is our retirement and pension guru, and he is the go-to guy on those issues, as well as insurance, workers' compensation, liability issues, employee relations, all those related to that. Amber is the guru in training for the pension issues, so she's also a backup. So if Craig's not around, you can certainly touch base with Amber on that, as well as Stephen will be available for a lot of those issues, Stephen Hogg. But Amber is our finance and tax person on any finance and tax related issue. And then we have, of course, Allison handling federal issues as well as the advocacy program.
Thank you, Scott. The next question is there legislation introduced relative to red light cameras?
Sure. Casey Cook. Actually, there is nothing in the Senate at this point. Earlier this week, House Bill 4177 by Representative Plakin was introduced. The bill is an all-out repeal of red light camera programs, leaving in place the preemption to the state. Everything I'm hearing is that there's not going to be anything filed in the Senate. Obviously, things can change. Along the same red light camera lines, there have been a couple of amber light timing bills that have been filed. They were around last year. House Bill 33 by Representative Ahern sets pretty arduous standards for developing amber light timing. And Senate Bill 590 by Senator Garcia also puts in place similar standards. We expect the Senate to amend their bill, hopefully, to codify current practice. They've had several discussions with traffic engineers, and we've talked with our folks, and so they have good language, so we expect those bills to be amended. I'll turn it back over to Allison to see if there's any more questions.
There are questions about the list of staff assignments on who does what. If that isn't on the website, there seems to be issue finding it, so we will include that as well in what we send out.
Yeah, we definitely will do that. We'll make sure that all those issue areas are explained clearly on the website. But again, remember, you can go to the legislative bulletin and read that, and whatever staff member is listed as handling that bill, that you can contact them. Or just call me, and I'll make sure I answer your questions for you. Any other questions? Well, great. Well, we really appreciate everybody participating. We look forward to receiving resolutions from each of your cities as it relates to the pension reform initiative. We really need your help on that, and we hope that you'll participate in the Monday morning conference calls that are at 9 a.m. on Monday mornings. There's a call-in number that is available, also on the web, I hope, right? Yes, on the web. If not, we'll make sure it's on the web again, and so we will make that happen, and we look forward to hearing from you on Monday mornings for these weekly updates. Thank you.